Sudan's Prime Minister Abdalla Hamdok has resigned after another day of mass protests rocked the capital, Khartoum. Thousands marched against a recent deal they had done to share power with the army, which staged a coup in October. Mr. Hamdok's decision to quit leaves the army in full control. We have more in this report.
It is another blow to Sudan's fragile attempt at a transition to democratic rule after a popular uprising led to the overthrow of long-term authoritarian President Omar al-Bashir in 2019. In a televised address, Mr. Hamdok said the country was at, quote, a dangerous turning point that threatens its whole survival. He said he had tried his best to stop the country from sliding towards disaster, but that despite everything that has been done to reach a consensus, it had not happened. Civilian and military leaders had made an uneasy power-sharing agreement after the army staged a coup on 25 October and initially placed Prime Minister Hamdok under house arrest. Under the agreement reached, the reinstated Prime Minister was supposed to lead a cabinet of technocrats until elections were held, but it was unclear how much power the new civilian government would have, and protesters said they did not trust the military. Thousands of people had been on the streets of the capital, Khartoum, and the city of Omdurman on Sunday, chanting and calling on the military to leave politics alone. On social media, activists have said 2022 will be the year of the continuation of the resistance. Sudan's Central Doctors Committee says more than 50 people have been killed at protests since the coup. The army defends the coup, saying it had acted to prevent a civil war. Coup leader General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan says Sudan is still committed to the transition to civilian rule, with elections planned for July 2023.
And joining me now to speak more about the happenings in Sudan is African Affairs analyst Ademola Oshodi. Good to have you join us.
Thank you.
So Prime Minister Hamdok's resignation has now left the military in full control, which is what people have been complaining about and the reason for the protest in the first place. The citizens in Sudan do not want the army in control. Why do you think that this power sharing agreement failed in the first place?
It failed because the military came back and took power. They took power about a few weeks ago. I think it was in October of last year, 2021. They had an agreement to share power with the military being the president, a military general being the president, and a civilian technocrat being the prime minister. So for some reason, the military took over the total affairs of governance, detaining the prime minister, the current prime minister. And government is totally under military rule. So they broke an agreement, and that basically the people lost confidence in them. Hence this prolonged protest in the streets of Khartoum, Omdurman, and all the major cities in Sudan.
And Prime Minister Hamdok was sort of the face of legitimacy for the power-sharing coalition. We saw the pressure from the West when he was first removed, and the pressure from the West asking that the military reinstate him. Now that he has departed that office, what sort of impact do you think it will make on the ability of the military to govern in Sudan and bring stability to that country?
It would be very difficult. The Prime Minister Hamdok, or former Prime Minister Hamdok, was seen as balanced. The military could work with him. The civilians looked at him wary-eyed, but he was a workable person. Based on all this funny and complicated balance of power sharing they had in Sudan, now that it will be quite hard to replace. The civilians again have lost confidence in the military. They don't trust whoever the military will put as prime minister, whether it's a technocrat or a civil society person or former politician. So it would be quite difficult getting a good replacement. they will have to get a replacement regardless. They will have to either have somebody chosen within the protesters, civil society groups.
It is one thing to get a replacement. I'm sorry to interrupt you. It is one thing to get a replacement, but another thing to get a replacement that is acceptable to the people, because we've seen the protests on the streets. It keeps growing irrespective of the military crackdown on protesters. But he made a statement, Prime Minister Hamdok made a statement just before he resigned. He said the country is at a dangerous turning point that threatens its whole survival. Do you see the ability of Sudan to make this transition into democratic rule?
Oh, yes, they will. They will stumble. They will have hiccups along the way, but they will get there. They always get there. The challenge to me is not actually getting there. The problem with my own concern is once they have that election, because we notice right now the protest is made up of leftist groups, nationalists, civil societies, intellectuals, students. But when they have a full-blown free and fair election, you may see the rise of an Islamic party. If you have an Islamic party in Sudan, you automatically have an Islamic state in Sudan. It happened in Egypt. It happened in I think it was in Iran with the Iranian Revolution. So you have this left-wing group fighting and removing, a despot or military rule, and then you think these intellectual liberals will take over power, and then you have a free election with, vast majority of Sudanese being Muslims, 97%. Even the former president had the country as an Islamic country. So there's nothing stopping the fundamentalists from taking power in Sudan, which would be another problem for the protesters and also the international community, especially the fact that Sudan has had associations with the groups linked to Al-Qaeda in the past. So they will get there. They will stumble. They will find somebody to replace Hamdok. But the biggest challenge will be post-election and how that suits the Sudanese people, especially people on the street, risking their life for change. The biggest challenge right now is soothing the protesters. They will come to a compromise. They have, it's a general thing. They will come to a compromise. They will find somebody suitable. Maybe the military will forfeit some power, some control. They will come to a compromise, and the country will move forward. It will move forward in stumbling fashion, but it will move forward, especially with the assistance of the international community. They can't afford Sudan to fail. It is quite a pivotal part of Northeast Africa, with Egypt on the top, Ethiopia at the bottom, Southern Sudan.
Just to jump in, how soon do you think that election will hold, or that compromise will happen? When you look at what's happening in Mali, where the military has now decided to hold on to power for likely another 5 years?
Well, the pressure in Sudan is quite different from the pressure in Mali. We don't see protests in the streets of Bamako, Mali, as we see in Khartoum, Sudan. So the military is under serious pressure. The people are ready to risk their lives in Sudan for change. So I do believe they will keep to that election timetable. The issue now is who is going to usher them in, who's going to carry them to that front line. And that will be the key person. I think within the next few weeks, there will be some sort of resolution. It may not stop the protests, but it will still get the country moving and get the governments in place, as we see.
All right, we'll see how things play out in that country. African Affairs analyst Ademola Oshodi, always great to have you talk to us.
Thank you.